Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we will be reviewing the FST Lot 1 Wash Processed Panama from Manhattan Coffee Roasters. And there's the bag right there. And Manhattan, based out of Rotterdam, Netherlands. And before we start discussing this coffee, let me give you my opinion on their updated packaging, as Manhattan has changed their bag designs since we last reviewed them. And truth be told, I was not the biggest fan of the changes when I first saw the new bags, and even heard some people compare them to Stumptown's packaging. There are some positives, however, as not only do the bags look significantly better in person, but you can tell that they are made from a higher quality material, but I definitely have a strong preference towards their old bag design, as not only did I enjoy the look more, but also felt that those bags themselves were pretty iconic. Manhattan is a coffee roaster that has appeared on this channel a lot over the last couple of years. That being said, it has been a bit since they were last featured, and a lot of people might assume it's because they made the transition from the Pro Batch to the Typhoon, but the reality is because they haven't really offered a lot of things that have caught our interest, and that's where this Panama comes into play. As I've said in the past, that I really enjoy reviewing non-Geisha Panamanian coffees, so when I saw this one, it felt like a great opportunity to finally revisit Manhattan. And I'm definitely looking forward to discussing it, as this right here is day 38. And recipe we went with for this coffee was our Manhattan recipe, which is a 16:1 water to coffee ratio, brewed at 99 degrees Celsius, about 210 degrees Fahrenheit. And I like this one best through the V60, which indicates a more medium fine grind. Roast profile for this coffee. So this one is one of Manhattan's filter roasts, and Manhattan is notorious for roasting on the very light side of things. That being said, I don't feel that this one is quite as light as some of their other coffees, as I feel like some people might say that this is pushing the development that they use for their filter coffees a little bit more, but even then it is still a very light coffee by most standards and metrics. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. Day 14, first impression, and we opted for the V60. And interestingly, the cup was kind of all over the board, as it certainly wasn't lacking for intensity, which was the initial theme we had for Manhattan's coffees when we first started reviewing them, and that's that they all seemed to offer a lot of intensity. A surprising amount of sweet citrus at the forefront with a slightly more sugary chocolate base. There are some slight drawbacks, including a very subtle graininess and spiced quality, giving a very lingering finish. It was a good start nonetheless, though maybe not necessarily what I was expecting from that first try. Day 17 through the Chemex, and there were a lot of positives to be taken away from this cup, as it was offering great clarity to a sweeter chocolate forward base. There's some slightly sweeter citric attributes to this one, as well as a nutty profile, but it finishes off into a nice caramel sweetness, so definitely a fair bit of positives on this day. Continue on to day 20, as we opted for the April brewer, and this cup was still solid, but not quite as good as some of the previous days, as it continues to offer excellent clarity and really nice definition with a solid level of sweetness. This one did skew a little bit more on the spiced side of things, giving it a Mexican hot chocolate feel. Solid all around, but on this day, maybe not to the same extent as some of the earlier tries. We continue on to day 23, as we opted for the V60 with some higher temperatures and a more fine grind, and I felt that there was a lot of consistency, as even our adjustments to our Manhattan recipe didn't seem to yield too many differences, as it's offering a mostly chocolate forward profile with a fair bit of the listed spice feel to it. It continues to remain very reminiscent of Mexican hot chocolate with excellent definition and structure, pretty sweet, plenty of body, notable brightness, solid yet again. We continue on to day 26, as we opted for the Chemex with the same adjustments, and I continue to feel that the cup is very well structured and well defined on this day as well. I feel like the Chemex really seems to accentuate some of those qualities, as it still at this moment has maybe been, I would say, on the slightly heavier side of those chocolate attributes, with a little bit more of that citric quality following it as well. The definition on this day seems to maybe wane ever so slightly, as this was the first time we'd experienced a little bit of inconsistency. A slight bit of nuttiness is also present, but it remains pretty sweet and straightforward. Continue on to day 29 with the V60 and the higher temperatures, more fine grind, and there continues to be consistency, though maybe not necessarily quite as good as some of the previous days, as it was skewing a little bit more on the nutty side of things. And this is when I was starting to see a slight bit of inconsistency in this coffee. Plenty of spiced chocolate qualities present yet again. Good day, if maybe not necessarily quite as good as some of the earlier days. Day 32 through the Chemex with the same adjustments, and it continues to remain extremely reminiscent of Mexican hot chocolate and even like a rich chocolate cake. The structure is wonderfully clean with a tremendous definition all around. Pretty solid and interesting day, even though the notes at this point have become a little repetitive. You're just kind of seeing a little bit more of a focus on certain attributes as opposed to other ones on earlier days. Day 35, final notes we have through the V60 with the higher extraction adjustments, and it was the best that I've been up to this point, so I was actually really happy we made the tasting wheel with this cup on this day. Continues to remain well structured with plenty of the well-defined chocolate cake dominating the cup. Nuttiness is present in the cool down, but for the most part, a pretty good day. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. And we have quite a few level 4s, so let's go through those. And we'll start with the cleanliness level 4. So I think this is one of the most important things about this coffee, and it's going to be the first thing we discuss with it. So the coffee that I have to compare this one alongside the most is the Hacienda La Esmeralda, the Catuai from April. And that one I felt like was on the verge of reaching that level 5 in terms of the clarity and cleanliness. This one right here is actually a little bit more of a true level 4 and maybe even on the slightly lower side. I don't want to say the slightly lower side of level 4, but relative to my experiences with non-Gesha Panamanian coffees, they do tend to be either right there at that 4 or on the higher side of the 4. But this one right here, maybe not necessarily as clean, even though it was well defined and well structured as some of the other non-Gesha Panamanian coffees we've reviewed in the past. It's still a 4. There's nothing really marring it from reaching that level. There's no funkiness, no fermentiness, no grainy quality, even if it was present in the earlier days. There's just a little bit, I want to say, less specific cleanliness and clarity relative to some of the other ones we've had in the past. Finish, level 4. So that's another thing where it does have that interesting kind of spiced chocolate finish to this one, and that set it apart as being a little bit unique relative to some of the other ones we've had in the past. But other than that, it definitely belongs there at that level 4, right there with the sweetness, as this one was definitely sweet right from the start. And that has been a theme with Manhattan's coffees, even with some of the changes that they have made, as I still have tried a fair few of their coffees since they've made the change from the Probat to the Typhoon. But I do have to say that maybe there was a little bit more sweetness that could have been had in this one, as I still felt that the April Hacienda La Esmeralda had a little bit more sweetness to it. Chocolate level 4, yeah, that was the most pronounced and well-defined characteristic to this one. And at times I said maybe a little bit more of that milk chocolate base, but towards the end I said a little bit more of a rich kind of chocolate cake to it. Then we have a handful of level 3s. We'll start with the acidity level 3. Not necessarily the brightest coffee, even with the adjustments we had made. Not entirely sure what to make of that, but that at times has been a characteristic of these coffees in general. So level 3 seems like a good place to put that. Florals level 3. I do have to say maybe a little bit of that undefined floral aspect to it, that kind of floral chocolate component that can be present in these sort of coffees as well. That's what got it there to that mark. Spice level 3. So I think I had mentioned that there was a lot of spiced qualities to it. I think that they have some sort of spice note listed on here, something like allspice, which does make a lot of sense. It did give it that very kind of, I want to say, Christmassy Mexican hot chocolate sort of feel to it. So a little bit of that kind of cinnamon nutmeg attribute that definitely kind of rounded out the uniqueness of this cup. Salty level 3, that was maybe a little bit more surprising of a component to this one, and it's one of the things that plays a role in the overall cleanliness and clarity of it, because it did have an interesting kind of salted feel to it, which added to, I guess, just the uniqueness of it, but it wasn't necessarily an overly desired quality. Citrus level 3, and I do believe that they have some sort of orange note listed on here. I want to say it was a little bit of a more generic, undefined citric quality to it, as it was hidden underneath what were the more, we'll say, typical Central American characteristics of that chocolatiness, the nuttiness, the caramel components. So it's there, maybe a little bit more subtle. And the other thing in that note is that caramel at the level 3, as I just mentioned, a little bit more of those typical traditional Central American qualities. And even though it's not something that I'd mentioned too much, there was a nice bit of a kind of candied sweet feel to it at times that did justify that being there at the level 3. Savoriness, level 3. And I feel like that's going to be the nutty quality to it, because there was enough of a savory nuttiness that also did kind of contrast with the rest of the cup. And it wasn't something that was overly desired either within this coffee. And then last thing worth discussing is the body at a level 3, as this one right here, a little bit more in that medium level in terms of the overall texture and body to it. But as I'm looking at this tasting wheel, I do think it's a pretty good representation of what I was getting from this coffee. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I've already mentioned that I do want to compare it alongside one of the more enjoyable non-Geisha Panamanian coffees we've reviewed recently, and that, of course, the Hacienda La Esmeralda from April. And I do have to say that I liked that coffee significantly more than I liked this one. This one started off positive, and I said, I think we can build from here. But honestly, it seemed to kind of plateau and never really improved a lot from that first couple of days that we had tried it. And even then, I felt like there were some less desired qualities within this one, where that one seems to have just excellent kind of chocolate bar, candied structure to it. This one right here, while it's well structured, it's structured maybe a little bit more in a type of intensity and profile that doesn't suit my own preferences. I had some really high expectations for this one, and maybe that's the other part of it, is that when I do go into a coffee with such high expectations, if it doesn't reach exactly what I'm looking for, then that can play a role in it. But truth be told, looking at the description of this coffee, it doesn't really sound like my type of coffee, even if it is the type of coffee that I do enjoy drinking, those washed Panamanian coffees as a whole. So I think that just kind of leaves me I had higher expectations for this one, and I thought it was fine, but maybe not to the extent that I was hoping for. The type of person I would suggest this coffee to, this one does skew a lot more on that crowd pleaser sort of coffee, as it does offer so many of the classic Central American characteristics, chocolatiness, nuttiness, as well as a little bit of caramelized aspect, still offering tremendous sweetness and clarity, while at the same time giving you some very slight fruit depth to it as well. I think if you really like Mexican hot chocolate, then this one's a really good fit for you, and I do enjoy that, but I do have to say that maybe this one was just offering it in a little bit more intensity than necessarily suited my own preference. I think for the most part, that's the best way I can leave this review. If you've by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if not already subscribed. And this right here has been a review of the FST Lot 1 Wash Processed Panama from Manhattan Coffee Roasters. Thank you for watching.